Good evening, everyone. The December 11, 2023 meeting of the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability is called to order at 6:38 p.m. I will begin with the call of the roll. Commissioner Brown. Present. Commissioner Driver is present. Commissioner Gomez. Present. Commissioner Loizen. Commissioner Nellis. Commissioner Terry. Present. Commissioner Troncoso. With all 7 members of the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability present, we have a quorum and we can conduct the public's business, the commission's business. The next item of business is public comment. If you would like to share something related to the commission's work on public safety and accountability, you have a few options. You can speak at a public meeting. You can also submit public comment in writing by emailing your comment to communitycommissionpubliccomment@cityofchicago.org, or you can bring a copy of your comment to one of the commission's public meetings and give it to either a commissioner or someone on the commission staff. People who wanted to speak during the public comment period tonight were asked to submit their names in writing earlier tonight. Names were then drawn at random by a member of the commission staff. Speakers who will be called in the order in which their names were drawn. If your name is called to offer public comment, we ask that you approach the microphone and line up in which the order in which your name is called. If you cannot approach the microphone, please raise your hand and we will bring a microphone to you. If your name is called public comment, approach the microphone, line up in which your order you're called. When it's your turn to know your name, and each speaker will have 2 minutes. We have allotted a total of 20 minutes for public comment. Who's virtual? How many people? You can give me 1 second. We're going to. We have an abundance of public speakers and need to sort out how to randomly select them. Our first speaker for public comment is virtual, will be Jamie Vargas, District Council Member Jamie Vargas. She's in person? Kara? Okay.
Good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kara Hendrickson, and I am the Executive Director of Impact for Equity. It's a privilege to address the Commission, an institution with the mandate and power to advance systemic reform and to address challenges Chicagoans face when police practices don't advance community safety. Impact for Equity is part of the Free to Move Coalition. As you'll hear from some of my partners tonight, we're an alliance of community and advocacy organizations working to create a safer, more racially equitable system of traffic safety in Chicago. Tonight, we're here to call on you to address CPD's discriminatory, excessive, and ineffective use of traffic stops by ending CPD's current use of traffic stops and by similarly limiting its use of consent searches. Last year, CPD conducted more than 500,000 traffic stops in the city of Chicago. On average, that would be more than 1,000 traffic stops every day. Addressing this practice is not only important, it's doable. Today, the Free to Move Coalition released on our website case studies of other cities, states, and departments across the country who have successfully enacted reforms to the way they conducted traffic stops. All those jurisdictions, except one, did so by creating a written policy or by passing a law. The exception, Fayetteville, North Carolina, saw positive outcomes when low-level stops were decreased, but those gains were reversed when a new chief led the department and increases in traffic stops and racial disparities occurred in subsequent years. We think, therefore, it's critical that this issue be addressed by way of a policy. And with an average of more than 1,000 traffic stops a day, there's no time to waste. Chicagoans deserve these reforms as much as any place in the country, and we hope the CCPSA will act quickly to create this policy right here so that everyone feels free to move. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight.
Our next speaker is Craig Kaiser, sorry.
Yes. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present my thoughts to you this evening. I'd like to refer you to a study conducted by the Northwestern Institute for Policy Research, which was published on May 17th, 2021. The study discussed the Neighborhood Policing Initiative, which was in theory launched in Chicago in January 2019. There were 4 key takeaways from the initiative. Research supports that building positive relationships with the community and the police can improve public safety. CPD needs to build supportive infrastructure with community groups, not just the CAPS officers, but all officers. Geographically assigned beat officers are critical to community policing, and time off the radio to engage with the community is essential. We are asking Superintendent Snelling to make NPD a priority. We are asking you, the commission, to establish specific, measurable, and time-bound goals to aid the superintendent in this effort to get geographically assigned beat officers back in the beats, out of their cars, with dedicated visitation time off the radio and talking to residents and businesses. The 18th district, I live in the 18th district in Streeterville, and the Streeterville Neighborhood Associates, of which I'm a founder, has an ambassador program which was developed to facilitate this process. We would hope that the superintendent will reach out to us to welcome beat officers into our community and to begin establishing a real NPI process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brianna Payton, virtual.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address you tonight. My name is Brianna Payton. I'm a resident of the 11th Ward, included in the 9th Police District, and I'm also the Director of Policy and Advocacy for the Chicago Appleseed Center for Fair Courts, which is a member of the Free to Move Coalition, but I'm commenting in my personal capacity as a concerned citizen. As a member of the Black community locally in Chicago and writ large, I am no stranger to the fact that Black people move through this city and country more vulnerable than our non-Black counterparts to have humiliating, harmful, and at times deadly encounters with police. For many of us, those harmful and unnecessary encounters begin with traffic stops. This was the case for Sandra Bland. Over the years, as stop and frisk policies nationwide came under more scrutiny as a form of racial profiling, we have seen a shift to vehicle traffic stops. The mechanism is different, but the results are the same. Black and brown people are having their Fourth Amendment rights violated with pretextual traffic stops and suspicionless searches, which contributes to our disproportionate representation in the criminal legal system. From 2015 to 2022, police traffic stops in Chicago have increased from 86,000 stops annually to more than 500,000. Less than 1% of those stops resulted in confiscation of illegal items, and only 0.05% resulted in confiscation of firearms. That means literally 99% of these stops serve essentially no greater purpose but to surveil and harass Chicagoans, especially Black and brown residents. In 2021, Black people comprised only 28% of drivers, but made up 61% of stops and 65% of vehicle searches. These stops and searches cause unwarranted contact with the legal system that results in baseless criminal cases or cases where the entire basis of accusations began with Fourth Amendment rights violations, undermining any claim to the legitimacy of the process. Most people would not consent to the government having unlimited access to search everyone's homes without cause, just on the 1% chance that something illegal is found in some people's homes. But that is what we settle for with these traffic stops. Simply put, the ends don't justify the means. Even more so, the results show that the means are counterproductive. This type of racial profiling and harassment further contributes to a lack of trust from marginalized communities and police, leading people to not want to collaborate or help their investigations when actual harm occurs in the community. It is critical that CCPSA use their platform to address this issue. It is better addressed.
Thank you. We've reached your time limit. Our next speaker is Lauren Jones.
Oh, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Lauren Jones. I'm here today representing the Empowering Communities for Public Safety Coalition. The CPS Coalition is a broad network of advocates and community organizers who have fought for increased police accountability in Chicago for decades. We lean on that experience to submit the following suggestions for CCPSA's 2024 goals for Superintendent Snelling. First, we believe the superintendent should create a plan for engagement between district commanders and district counselors, rather than leaving it up to the discretion of district commanders. While the degree of district counselor engagement with Chicago Police Department may vary across districts, it's crucial that the district commanders are required to engage when called upon. The superintendent should aim to create a department policy that directs engagement and creates clarity and signals support for the work of district counselors throughout the city. Second, the superintendent should do everything within his power to ensure transparency is prioritized in the officer disciplinary process in order to safeguard against accountability setbacks like the arbitration provision in the most recent FOP contract. Third, these goals should call the superintendent to work with the CCPSA and community to end pretextual stops and ensure that there is a policy that creates lasting change. Fourth, the public deserves to know exactly where the nearly $2 billion CPD budget is allocated. A primary goal for the superintendent should be to implement a thorough workforce allocation study in partnership with government stakeholders, advocates, and community members. Additionally, given the inherent risk with CPD's growing use of surveillance technology like ShotSpotter, Dunami, Clearview AI, we believe that the superintendent's top priority should include increasing transparency, evaluation, and independent oversight of the use of these technologies in order to safeguard privacy of all Chicagoans and foster accountability. Finally, looking ahead, it's imperative to establish mechanisms for assessing the efficacy and scope of training programs. These are the goals that we're setting out, and we're hoping that the CCPSA can contribute to setting goals that have a lasting impact on policing in Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next virtual speaker is Rena Campbell. Not here. Our first in-person speaker is going to be Asia Smith, followed by District Councilor Lee Bilecki.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi. Hi, my name is Asia Smith, ASIA-SMITH, and I'm a community organizer with the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs and a part of the ECPS and GAPA coalitions. I'm here today to call on the commission to support the Stop ShotSpotters campaign to cancel the $9 million contract of a faulty, racially biased surveillance technology that has done significant damage to our community and played a key role in the murder of the then 13-year-old Adam Toledo by CPD in 2021. ShotSpotter is a waste of resources, an impediment to actual safety in our community. Research from Chicago's own OIG report shows that ShotSpotter works inaccurately. Evidence of gun-related criminal offenses was found in only 9.1% of ShotSpotter initiated deployments and over 2,400 stop and frisk linked to ShotSpotter over a period of 18 months. On top of this, 89% of ShotSpotter deployments in Chicago turned up no gun-related incidents whatsoever, and less than 5% of ShotSpotter alerts led police to a shooting or attempted shooting. When addressing gun violence, we need to utilize root cause frameworks. ShotSpotter cannot and will not prevent gun violence, and it's only a reactionary apparatus. CCPSA was a body created by the community for the community, and I currently work on the GAPA coalition and was a part of a grassroots effort to get DCs elected. As an elected body, CCPSA has tremendous power and influence, and a recommendation from you holds weight and influence. And as a community member, I really urge you to use your power to address this with Mayor Brandon Johnson. During his campaign, Mayor Johnson committed to canceling the ShotSpotter contract. That is a platform that he ran on, and he's spoken about the harm that ShotSpotter has caused himself. The contract is set to expire February 16th, but we still have not heard from the mayor about whether or not he will keep his promise. I urge you as a collective body to take the demands of community members seriously and work to cancel this contract with us. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Lee Bilecki, 22nd District Police Council member. Talk about traffic stops. Let's talk about traffic stops for a few minutes here. The information supplied by Free to Move, of course, there was over 500,000 traffic stops. Of those traffic stops, 291,000, little over 291,000 were African-American. 129,000, little over 129,000 were Hispanic. Over 67,000 were white. When you look at the data, 96% of all the traffic stops of African-American drivers ended in a verbal warning, no ticket, no citation. The Hispanics level is almost the same. One statistic that they seem to leave out is that since January 1st, 2018, over 3,000 people of color have been killed in Chicago by gun violence. Okay, and since January 1st, 2022, over almost 8,000 guns have been recovered on traffic stops. Now, I don't know about you guys, but to me, every illegal gun taken off the street is a life saved and a crime stopped. So the Free to Move Coalition, I agree that perhaps some of these less serious offenses obviously have resulted in verbal warning and not a traffic ticket. When somebody's got a broken windshield or a cracked tail light, obviously they're getting a break to go take care of that situation. But to me, lives are important. The lives in these communities, impoverished communities, are important. So I think reeling back on letting the police do their job is a mistake. Thank you. And I'd like to just say one last thing. Anthony, I want to throw a shout out to Anthony Driver and the rest of the commission for doing an excellent job this last year. I think you guys really showed some dedication, and I wish you the best.
Thanks, Lee. Let the record reflect that Vice President Gomez is going to be moderating the rest of the public speaking. Do you know how much time we have left on the public speaking in total? Just exhaust the list? Okay. Okay, so we'll let the majority of the next speakers go. The next two speakers that I'll call to the mic are going to be Tawan Sims and Lori Alexander. Please step up to the mic and line up in that order to speak. And make sure that you remember to spell your name.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tawan Sims. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tawan Sims. I'm a resident here on the north side of Chicago in Rogers Park. For everybody to be talking about traffic stops, it's one of the things I wanted to address. But Mr. Blecky just brought up the fact that how many Black people been killed? A lot of us. On the 14th of November just now.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Just speak closer to the mic so that the online folks can hear your comment.
On the 14th of November just now, if you all care to search Kenneth Sandy, he was murdered at the Howardale station. Y'all might be aware because of the Yellow Line had an incident that day. Young man shot down, murdered. And he said that it's important about the violence. I was shot in the stomach. They allowed the man to leave. We can talk about traffic stops because personally, I'm actually living all of this madness out. I was not stopped, I was attacked in Rogers Park in 2020 of July by 2 officers, supposedly over a traffic stop. The young lady just said so many different things that make sense, but he answered it best. 13% that's African-American population, supposedly in America, but 100,000 stops African-Americans, Black people, then Latins, then 67 white people. Don't get it, but that's neither here nor there. Kenneth Sandy was a good kid. And if we're gonna address gun violence, then we gotta address it properly in the city. Not for the fact that, oh, Black people killing Black. Hey, if y'all if it's so important to have guns taken off the streets, why would you allow me to be shot in the stomach and allow the individuals to leave? Why was the young man who murdered Kenneth Sandy allowed to go home on house arrest? If these issues mean anything to us.
Thank you.
I'm just saying.
This is the last one. So Lori Alexander, and there is, I believe it said it was you that. So this is are you speaking at all? We have two more. Okay. Okay, well, Lori Alexander. Are you Lori? Okay, who signed up as Cook County Public Defender? Okay, so you're last. Yes.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity. I guess my comment more so I have is I'm suggesting that I work for Chicago Public School and I'm a crossing guard, and the traffic, when it come down to being outside, the danger with the crossing guards, ever since we're no longer with Chicago Police Department, we became ignored totally. So many crossing guards got hurt, got killed for the past 3 to 4 years. And what I am so upset about, that these people dedicate their lives to save children's lives, but no one pays attention to the crossing guard. We still wearing flags on our shirt just so that we can get noticed. But ever since then, we got with Chicago Public School, no one cares about the crossing guards. So I'm just more concerned about most of my crossing guards that's in danger and the stuff they see. We're in drug neighborhoods sometimes. We are people, we hold our stop signs out. I got my wand, I turn my light on. I'm out there at 6 o'clock in the morning. They said they don't see me. So I'm just concerned about what are we gonna do as a public safety to look out for the guards who look out for the children. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Jemba. Jemba is JJEMBA. And I'm the Director of Legislative and External Affairs at the Law Office of the Cook County Public Defender. I'm here tonight because Chicago police practices impact a majority of the 70,000 clients we are appointed to represent annually. It's undisputed that CPD uses investigatory stops, pat downs, and traffic stops in a disproportionate and even violent manner against Black, Latinx, and poor Chicagoans. These stops are not only a constitutional violation, they're also often the gateway to criminal charges that can inflict a lifetime of collateral consequences. I'm here tonight to explain the ways in which pretextual traffic stops harm the majority of our more than 70,000 clients. Just like stop and frisk, pretextual stops under the guise of community safety efforts overwhelmingly impact Black and Latinx people. CPD officers target poor neighborhoods and wait for Black and Latinx drivers to commit minor traffic violations or outright fabricate violations as justifications to pull these drivers over. Officers use these interactions as opportunities to search clients' vehicles for weapons. If a weapon is found, anyone in the car may be charged with a felony. Almost a quarter of felony cases assigned to our office are simple gun possession cases just like these. As part of the criminal cases, our clients review tens of thousands of hours of body-worn footage, camera footage annually. This footage reveals what police reports often don't: improper traffic stops of thousands of individuals. These stops are fishing expeditions for officers to find guns. These interactions then begin the criminal prosecution process that can result in lost jobs, housing, pretrial services appointments that conflict with work of educational commitments and electronic monitoring and home confinement, resulting in these cases taking months to try or years to resolve. The Cook County Public Defender's Office recognizes the crucial importance of this conversation and urges the Commission to impose policies that support changes in these stops. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our public comment period. All folks who have signed up have been called. We would now like to invite members of our non-citizen advisory council to the microphone to offer public comment. We have one more spot. If you all can give us 1 second, please. We had 9 folks, we had spot room for 10. I don't know what happened to it.
Thank you for that. And I don't mean to talk about you, but I am. So I'm a little concerned about, and I don't know if this is true, that you want to change chases. And if you go up against the Coalition for the Consent Decree, which Women's All Points Bulletin and I and others are part of, we will sue everyone on this board if you go against what the consent decree put in place as far as chases are concerned. We do not want people being killed because they are being chased in cars. $15 million went to a mother of 6 because of a chase. I will write an op-ed and tell them to sue every single one of you individually if you change and vote to change the chase policy that has been put in place by the consent decree. Individually, I will write and tell them to sue you to make sure that your names are on it, because we don't play when we put together policy under the consent decree. So overriding the policy that we put in place under the consent decree means that, first of all, you don't care about federal judges. And secondly, you don't care about the people who put you in those seats. The consent decree created y'all. You know, we created you all. So respect us in the work that we do, okay? Do not, under any circumstance, override a consent decree policy. Don't do it. We can sue you, we will sue you, and I will make sure the first person that dies in a chase knows that you all made that change.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. This is about the NAC is a volunteer group that was appointed to be advisors to the CCPSA and to work with, reflect, and incorporate the public safety perspectives and experiences of non-citizens and new Chicagoans. And we are working and we're willing to work with the Chicago Police Department. We have 3 priorities right now that we are working on. One is the welcoming city ordinance, U-Visa, and the closing doors of asylum seekers as an allegation that has been worked on.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Glo Choi. I use he, him pronouns. I am one of the council members of the NAC. So Chicago has been a welcoming city since Mayor Harold Washington implemented the Welcoming City Ordinance in 1985. Before then, immigrants avoided reporting serious crimes or accessing critical life-saving services due to the fears of family separation, imprisonment, and deportation. And through advocacy from directly impacted communities, and despite political pressure from anti-immigrant forces, we have continued to strengthen and uphold the Welcoming City Ordinance in the spirit of public safety and solidarity to ensure safety of all Chicagoans. Yet today, there are some city council members who want to revoke the Welcoming City Ordinance, stating that it would solve the current crisis of incoming migrants and reduce crime. However, doing so would accomplish neither, as they would only make us less safe. Less safe for both immigrants and non-citizens alike. It would force immigrants back into the shadows. Therefore, we urge the commission to call on our alderpeople to maintain the ordinance and to collectively call for state and federal funding for essential services such as housing, shelter, case management, and systems of a caring economy, all of which are aspects of a thriving community we believe is a critical part of public safety.
Hi, everybody. My name is Angel Rubin of Arijo, and I'm also a member of the NAC. And we have heard of some reports and allegations that some police districts have closed and locked their doors to new arrivals or to unhoused folks who are experiencing crises. We strongly advise that the police superintendent give clear direction to each district to ensure that we are respecting the rights of both our unhoused neighbors and our new arrivals as well. We believe that we understand that there's been a lot of pressure on our police districts and our police stations. However, we cannot stop treating people as they're not as if they're not human. So we are willing to work with you to come up with policies that and ensure clear directives to each of our police districts. And then another issue that we also want to address with the Chicago Police Department is our U visa backlog. We currently have a backlog of U visas for our non-citizen community. This tool is extremely important, especially when it comes to solving violent crimes and interacting with groups who would be scared to interact with the Chicago Police Department, especially during investigations. This not only respects the rights of an individual as a non-citizen, but it also aids the police in helping create safer communities. And I believe that if we strengthen that process, we believe that any efforts to do community outreach, as well as improve departmental processes to make the job of your officers easier, is also going to be beneficial for everybody. So we look forward to meeting with the police superintendent and any other partner who's willing to help us develop these policies. But please, Superintendent, I ask you to not lock the doors to anybody who's trying to come into police districts, not saying that it's true or not saying that it's been investigated, but we'd definitely like to have that conversation. And let's have our immigrants be also part of our public safety plan. So thank you very much. And I'm willing to collaborate with anyone and everybody willing to advance the rights of our non-citizens here in the city.
Thank you. We've reached the end of our public comment period. The next order of business before the commission is the approval of the minutes. Before today's meeting, draft minutes of the commission's meeting held on November 13th were circulated to each commissioner. Are there any corrections to the draft minutes that have been circulated? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the commission meeting held on November 13th? It's been moved by Commissioner Nellis and seconded by Commissioner Gomez to approve the commission's minute meetings that was held on November 13th. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, would now move to a vote. Those in favor of adopting a motion to approve the minutes of the commission's November 13th meeting, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it and the motion carries. The minutes are approved. Our next order of business will be reports and updates. We will begin by test what the rules are. We will begin by as set forth by city ordinance. I will ask Commissioner Gomez to make the presentation.
Thanks. So the city ordinance that governs this commission allows for the public to call for special meetings on topics related to public safety and accountability issues. Based on the guidelines that are set by that ordinance, I would like to remind everyone that it takes 2,000 signatures from Chicago residents to have a qualifying petition. Now, there is no obligation for signers of a petition to be adults or U.S. citizens or registered voters. Signers do not need to have a formal permanent address even, and unhoused individuals can sign the petitions as well. A qualifying petition will require the commission, or a collection of qualifying petitions will require the commission to hold special meetings. Qualifying petitions need to specifically state the issue or concern that would be the subject of the special meeting. That issue or concern must fall within the commission's purposes under the section of the ordinance. Petitions can propose up to 10 specific topics, and the commission gets 14 days from the day of receiving those qualifying petitions to determine and announce whether a special meeting is required. If a meeting is indeed required, the special meeting must take place within 21 days of that receipt. I think that was the extent of the update on my end, but I'm going to pass on the microphone to Commissioner Loizon, who's going to provide us an update on officer wellness.
Thanks. Thank you. Good evening. Last month, we held a panel discussion on officer wellness with Superintendent Snelling attending and other mental health and wellness experts and champions, including Alexa James from NAMI, Sandy Jo MacArthur, former LAPD, and Alderman Matt O'Shea. Over 130 people attended the panel, including virtual and in-person attendees. We have received a lot of good feedback about the meeting and continued interest in how CCPSA will support officer wellness efforts. Some of the items we are working on include working with CPD to incorporate officer wellness into 2024 goals, assessing current policies on wellness that are in place at CPD, determining what wellness training is available to CPD leadership, continuing to speak with subject matter experts, and holding future discussions on this important topic. We will continue to update in our monthly meetings as we go forward. Thank you.
Now we're going to hear from the Chicago Police Department, the Police Board, and the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, also known as COPA, leadership regarding their 2024 goals. Before I invite our first presenter, I want to give a quick overview of the goal setting process. Under the CCPSA ordinance, the Commission has the power to set yearly goals for the CPD Superintendent, the COPA Chief Administrator, and the Chicago Police Board President. Each of these agencies has a working group that consists of 2 commissioners. Goals presented by each agency tonight are their draft goals. Tonight's hearing will give all the commissioners, including those not a part of the working group, a chance to ask questions and make recommendations. After tonight, the Commission will work on a formal response to each group's draft goals. We have and will continue to receive feedback from the community about each agency's goals. We will work over the next month to finalize these goals. We plan to vote at our January meeting on whether or not to adopt these goals. Commissioner Brown will now give a brief overview of the Commission's work with CPD on the goal setting process thus far.
Thank you. Commissioner Driver and I have met twice with CPD in the past several weeks to collaborate on CPD's 2024 goals. We met in mid-November to begin the goal-setting process and discussed several goal areas for consideration. Some of these came from our budget review, some came from our CCPSA team, some came from community input, and some came from our experience with last year's goals. The areas we suggested were workforce allocation, community policing, training and leadership development, legal judgments, trying to bring those down, infrastructure as it relates to officer wellness and effective policing, data analytics and reporting, technology and transparency, and civilianization. CPD submitted their draft goals on December 1st. Commissioner Driver and I met with CPD last week to continue our goal-setting discussion and provide feedback to these draft goals. Would Superintendent Snelling and anyone else from his team presenting on the 2024 goals please join us on the stage to present your 2024 goals?
Good evening, everybody. And I'd like to say good evening to the Commission and everyone who's here tonight. As a community member of Chicago and a member of the Chicago Police Department. All right, that's better. Can you hear me? All right, very good. So as a community member of Chicago and a member of the Chicago Police Department, I understand the importance of hearing the concerns of our citizens, like I'm hearing right now in this room. I know that our personal safety at home and in our neighborhoods is of the utmost importance to everyone here. Public safety is the top priority for every member of the Chicago Police Department, and it will be moving forward. Strong partnerships and collaboration with our residents and community organizations is how we will build a stronger community. I was honored to serve as the commander of the 7th District in Englewood because I grew up there. That's why I know how important it is to bring the community voices to the table. As someone who grew up in Chicago, I know how important it is that people who live and work in our communities are seen and heard. The police department and our communities cannot exist separately. I wholeheartedly believe that no one knows what any community member needs better than the community members who live in those communities. Also, the officers who work in those communities. Today, as superintendent, my goals for public safety are rooted in partnership. CPD will continue to work with the commission on articulation of each of these goals. Those goals include publicly articulation of crime-fighting strategy that is data-driven and grounded in constitutional principles. Further, my belief that every officer is a community policing officer. This will be done by integrating community policing strategies across every district and amongst every police officer. We'll provide quality investigations in our detective division. These investigations will be timely. We'll be reaching out to families to make sure that we're communicating that those family members know, or those victims know, that we're working to bring them some justice. We will improve members' morale by building a comprehensive culture of wellness. We've already opened 2 sites, EAP for officers to go and get help, but we're also reducing overtime and mandatory overtime for officers. We've already made those changes. If our officers are well, our officers are healthy, they're mentally well, they're going to work better and harder for you. So we have to make sure that we're putting the most well-trained, best officer that we can into your communities or into our communities. We'll provide quality leadership by the development of our command staff. I believe in the top-down effect. So when we put these programs in place, we will be developing our command staff to put this message out that all of our officers are community officers and that we are working with the community and we will hear your voices. Finally, we will efficiently and effectively manage department resources through a workforce allocation. We've already begun work on that. We'll be looking as we move forward to make sure that we are transparent in the information that is gathered through that allocation. We cannot have one singular public safety plan for the entire city. Our district commanders have more autonomy to address resources and strategies based on the needs of the individual communities they serve. If we have one strategy, we're not addressing the issues of each individual district. Each district has its own set of issues. We have districts where we have impoverishment. We have districts that are more well-off than others. We have districts that are just loaded with businesses. We have to address each individual problem in each district. I cannot provide one strategy that will go citywide and be effective. So we have to make sure that we have a focus on what our communities need and what each one of our community is asking for. From the top down, we expect our leaders to mentor those under their command. Every officer of every rank should feel prepared and empowered. That's how we sustain safety through generations. We cannot just hold officers accountable. We have to hold ourselves accountable. Leadership is important. And when our officers have the best leadership that we could possibly provide for them, our officers will do better. The work that they're doing out there right now is very important. Our leadership has to understand that, nurture that, and mentor each individual so that they continue to do the work. All of our members across the department should be active in the communities they serve. And community members should feel empowered and encouraged to collaborate with law enforcement. This is very, very important right now. And I don't know if anybody really understands how important it is. We see the spike in crime across the city. We see the issues that are happening right now. As a police department, we cannot do this alone. We've been doing this for over a century, and we're still having the issue. We have to work collaboratively. We have to work together. We have to work in partnership with each other. We have to have these conversations that we're having here today. I can guarantee you that we're not going to agree on everything, but what I can guarantee you is that we can come to some type of agreement. If we're not working together, we're not working. That's how we get to a stronger and safer Chicago. I'm looking forward to continue this honest dialogue as we go through this journey together. Now, that being said, I'd like to address something. And because I've heard it over and over again, and we keep hearing it, and I will tell you this, working with the commission here, they don't leave any stones unturned. We have these conversations, we talk about these things, and the collaboration between us has been great. Again, we won't necessarily agree on everything, but we found things that we can agree upon. Traffic stops. Here's what I will tell you about traffic stops and where we're moving right now. My focus on traffic stops are for two things: traffic safety and violent crime. Now, when I say violent crime, we have an abundance of stolen vehicles in the city of Chicago. And we also realize that those vehicles that are stolen are being used in secondary crimes, carjackings, robberies of women, the elderly, children. And we've seen some of those robberies go wrong. And we've seen people murdered as a result. An 86-year-old man murdered for his car. We saw a family thrown to the ground, woman coming home with her daughter, gun placed to her head, forced to give up. For that family, no one was hurt. With these stolen cars, we have license plate readers and other ways of determining when a car. We have to put traffic stops on. When we do, we recover proceeds from robberies, and we have the data to show it. Proceeds from robberies and gun recoveries. If we can stop someone from being robbed, we can stop someone from being shot, someone from being murdered, that's our job. We can save one life, we've done something great for that day. It's extremely important. The other purpose, traffic safety. We all know that we have some dangerous intersections out there, and if you do the research, you'll see that there are a lot of accidents that may occur in those locations. The purpose of traffic stops should be to change the behavior of a driver who is driving poorly or dangerously. That is the purpose of the traffic stops. Now, I can tell you right now, there's already been a reduction in traffic stops since I've taken over because the focus is different. My focus is for violent crimes and for traffic safety. But to completely remove traffic stops would be a non-starter in this city, especially right now. Because if we were to do that, those who wish to do you harm would do more harm. Robberies would increase. Carjackings would increase. Shootings would increase. Over the past 3 years, Chicago Police Department has recovered more guns and made more gun arrests than New York and LA combined. And that's been over the past 3 years, this year included. There's a lot of data out there, and I will be transparent on every single thing that we do. But everything that we do will be rooted in constitutional policing. The consent decree is important. However, we don't want that consent decree to just be something that we check the box on, because we could do that. We could say we reached compliance, but we'd have to understand what effect that had on our police department. This is an opportunity for us to create a better department and get better and more resources for our officers. When we do that, we now make public safety better for everyone sitting in this room, for everyone's family, and for the city of Chicago. This is a beautiful city when you drive down the street and you see what it is. We want to keep it that way. Coming from a neighborhood where I've seen in my past a lot of policing, some over policing, I can tell you right now the direction that we're moving in. And we see our officers doing it on a daily basis, especially now, knowing that they get their time off and that their days off are not going to just be canceled without notice, and having a feeling that we don't care about them. Our officers feeling better helps them do better. And they go out there every day, regardless of what anybody thinks, and they put their lives on the line so that your day is safer. We're down a lot of officers, and it's evident. But we're going to continue to work, and those officers are doing it every day, and we're going to continue to work for you. And it doesn't matter if you agree with us or not. It doesn't matter if you like us. It doesn't matter. Our job is to make you safe. So our opinion of anyone out there will be removed from how we police our communities. We're going to make sure that we keep our community safe, and it doesn't matter what community we're in. So I've heard a lot of great things in here tonight. I've heard a lot of great feedback. I appreciate how much work and how much research you've put into these things, but what I would ask you to do is go a step further. Look at some of the things that we will put out, because we will be transparent. I'll be open and honest about any and every single thing that we do, because we've got nothing to hide. If we're wrong, I'm going to say we're wrong. But when we're right, I'm going to stand up and say that we're right. When my officers are doing the jobs that they're supposed to be doing out there, and they're accused of wrongdoing, and I know they're right, I'm going to stand up. And I'm going to make sure that the work that these officers are doing is noted, and that they're protected in doing the work that they're doing to protect you. So keep one thing in mind. I hear your voices. So when we deal with these traffic stops, and trust me, been working with the commission on this, we're going to make sure that every single thing we do is rooted in constitutional policing. With that, I'm sure I've talked enough, but I appreciate everyone here. I appreciate the commission, and thank you for this time. And I don't know if you want me to answer any questions at this time. I'll be happy to.
Yes, that would be helpful. We would now open the floor up to questions from commissioners for the superintendent about his goals. Everybody probably has questions, so we'll start on this end. If we can try to limit it to 2 to 3 questions, or 2 would be ideal.
Hi, good evening, Superintendent.
Oh.
Good, how you doing?
Good, good thing.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about is related to strategic planning. In the previous goal setting from last year, there were goals set by the commission related to strategic planning. I see that you have strategic planning goals created again this year. So what I'm hoping that you'll do is first explain whether any of the strategic planning or any of those goals from last year have been carried over as part 1. And then as part 2, I noticed that your strategic goal setting appears to be at the commander level. I understand why that makes sense to me, but could you just describe what kind of strategic planning is going to be done for units that work citywide, for example, the detective division, and how those strategic planning goals will be articulated by the department so that community members know what to expect?
So let me start by saying this. My strategic plan is my strategic plan. So the goals that I want to set is rooted and based in partnership, not only with the community, but with other agencies. One of the things that we've seen over time is that our officers will go out to certain locations, jobs, and even our detectives, and we offer resources to families, we offer resources to victims. We don't actually provide those resources. Other department or other citywide agencies do. And if those resources are not provided, or if we don't follow up with that, then these families are left with a promise, and it's a broken promise. So what we want to make sure is that we hold every agency accountable, not just the Chicago Police Department. So we want to move forward to make sure that these services are provided, especially when it comes to wraparound services. Leadership from the top down. What we've done over the past is that we've trained our officers. And when we train our officers from the bottom up, our officers may be well trained, but if our leadership is not pushing the message and the goals that we set, then it's a failure. We can't hold our officers accountable without first holding our leadership accountable. So from the top down, once we have a plan in place, we want to make sure that every member in the leadership position here is conveying that message to our officers, and that information is being followed. And I'm sorry, I'm sure I missed something, another part of your question.
I was asking about what kind of strategic planning will be done for more citywide units that aren't tied to a district, like the detective division, intel, things along those lines.
So when we talk about the detective division, what we have to focus on there, and I've heard this from multiple people, the follow-up. The follow-up information is very important. When family members are looking for some type of justice for someone who was murdered or seriously hurt, or even a victim, we have to make sure that we provide those services. Now, what we're doing with the detective division right now is expanding. We are going to add more detectives, but we also are going to build the family liaison program where they're reaching out to the families. The other units within the department, let's look at something like a wire team, someone who is doing a long-term investigation. These things are very important when we're looking at the overall picture of crime. We can't focus on crime with one bag of drugs at a time. We have to look at the big fish. And that focus is going to be important because we can put more officers on the beat, which we will do when we can, but those officers will not get to the root of those bigger problems. So those are the types of focus, and just a couple of examples of what we'll be doing.
Okay, I know we need to move along, so I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just going to ask you to please consider the following points in your goal setting. First and foremost, please consider significant leadership training, particularly for your commanders, similar to the PLA, which I know you're very familiar with. Also, I would ask you to please consider adding to your goals a review at a minimum and an overhaul, preferably of the promotional process so that CPD can ensure that the best leaders are being put in place in a fair and equitable manner. And finally, I would ask you to consider in your goal setting to set forth specifics about the way you are going to effectuate the civilian hiring that you have set as a goal, given the challenges with hiring throughout the entire city. I think it's extremely important for community members to understand what that process will look like. Civilian hiring has been a goal for a long time and it doesn't get done because the hiring process is so cumbersome. And it's important for us to understand how you are going to make that work with such a highly set goal on civilianizing the department. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's great information. When you get the strategic plan, you'll see every one of those points that you just pointed out. They'll be in that strategic plan.
So going forward with commissioners, we have 2 more departments that have to go. If you must ask 2 questions, please do, but if you can, please limit it to 1 question. And Superintendent, if you can answer those questions as concise as possible. I'd also like to just make a public comment in response to the last thing that you said. I totally agree with you. We do, as a part of our process, want to try to get a goal in there about civilianization and like hiring targets and things like that. But I think I can speak for Beth and myself in that we're in a very interesting time where there's going to be a new commission in April. And we also want to be cognizant of these are goals that we are in charge of holding the superintendent and his department accountable for. So we are trying to limit it to a certain amount that we can use to hold the department accountable and that is attainable with them. But also knowing that we don't want to create 9 or 10 goals or 12 goals. And then there's potentially and probably going to be a new commission that has to come in and is now tied to a laundry list of things that we have done. So just wanted to add that in there as well. Although I do totally agree with you about the things that you mentioned.
So I think one of the things that has been in my mind recently when it comes to one of the biggest deficits the department is still struggling with, and I'm thankful that there are folks that have worked on the consent decree because the consent decree reports often bring this up, is the ability of the department and the city in general, it's not just a police department issue, to be able to create and analyze data in an effective way. And I know that the budget that you are all allocated in a way try to address that by expanding the number of positions and data scientists to help create more data transparency. But I think going back to this issue, one of the questions that I have when I see goal number 4 on workforce allocation is what happens if we don't find the people? And how can we make goal number 4 a goal that creates a plan B of what happens when in the middle of Q3 we don't have those data scientists hired? How can we use the resources that we currently have to make sure that those dashboards that need to be created, that workforce allocation plan that needs to be created still gets created, even if we don't end up hiring all the positions that we end up allocating for? It's a question that you're welcome to answer if you want, but also just a comment on I think is a shared goal amongst the commission and the department. I think as Commissioner Loizon said, we're all in a tough situation.
Good to go. So I'll just say just quickly, not to get too deep into that, this is why we're working right now to make sure that we streamline that process of hiring. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to do what we're doing. We're going to work the best with what we have right now, and we're going to just continue to try to streamline that process to get as many people in as we can.
I don't have a question. I will just limit mine to a comment. And the comment is in regards to traffic stops. And I just want to first off say that I appreciate the conversation that not only you and I have had, but the conversations we've had with Commissioner Brown as well as your team on the subject. And I think the only thing I want to say is that I really want to work hard towards some sort of resolution as a person who has only been here for 14 months. And I really hope you're here for a long time because I do like to work with you. And I think you have our city's best interest at heart. But we've had 4 superintendents who we've dealt with. And just seeing how the different temperament and how things change based on who's in the seat, who's the big guy. That's what scares me. And that's the reason why I want to work hard towards some resolution that is not dependent on a person, because I do think you and I have very similar ideals when it comes to this specific issue. But you and I aren't permanent fixtures, and so I just wanted to put that out there that I would like to find something that's lasting, that's a solution that doesn't change so quickly when leadership changes. Although I have full faith in the things that you've said.
No, I agree with you 100%. We want to put something in place that we know is going to be sustainable and not something that's just going to be the flavor of the day. So I agree with you 100%. That's it.
I don't have many questions either because I feel like I've already asked you at least 100 in our meetings together. But I do want to ask you one question for the benefit of everybody sitting here tonight. We all know that a large proportion of traffic stops happen through citywide teams and some teams in particular. So can you say something about what you've been doing related to those citywide teams?
Well, I just disbanded a citywide team. Our citywide CST, that's no more. So we know that there were a lot of traffic stops performed, but it wasn't that. It's just that I felt that those resources would be better served in the areas or in the districts. So this way we know where these officers are, and those officers can now supplement our other officers within the districts who are being overworked and going to jobs and being bogged down with jobs.
Superintendent Snelling, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate your level of engagement with the commission. I appreciate that victim services take a central role in your goals. Your goals speak about measuring the increase in victims served when the dozens of new victims advocates will be added in the 2024 budget. And I think quantity is important, but I would ask, do you have any thoughts as to how to measure quality of victim services provided? I'll speak about this a bit later in our meeting, but I would personally suggest the adoption of what many other cities have, which is a victim satisfaction survey, listening to victims and asking how satisfied they were with the handling of their case in the spirit of listening to victims.
Absolutely. And we've actually had this conversation with the commission. So yes, it's a
Good evening, Superintendent Snelling. Thank
How
you
are
for being here. Really quickly, along with, I would agree with Commissioner Loizon around some more specificity and measurable things that we can discuss at a later time. But what I would like to add and get your buy-in today is around something that we spoke about, and it's related to this. I guess it would fall under this idea of community policing, and seeing how we can incorporate something where we are implementing a sort of service learning hours, maybe for recruits, at least starting with recruits, and figure out what that can look departmental wide, so that we have individuals who are engaging with these communities that have a lot of these public safety challenges outside of a phone call for assistance. So that may look like volunteering on some youth team, or even if there is a legal clinic and they have a legal expertise, just so they have an opportunity to engage with those community members that they will be serving. And then they'll have a different perspective because they won't just be engaging with people that they wouldn't normally otherwise at the time of a call for service. So that's really something that I wanted to mention, something I know that I've spoken to you about before. And I think a great place for that will fall under that community policing. So figuring out how to tack that in there where we can measure that, right? Because we can then sell the idea of this many hours, these organizations, this many officers, so forth and so on. And I think it'll be a good thing for both community and the department.
I agree 100%. It's something that we've actually already started. We just need to build upon it, and we need a greater focus on it. But I do believe that we can build upon that program and get to exactly what you're talking about, and then measure the success of it.
Good evening, Superintendent Snelling.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I want to first just commend you for what I think is an obvious change in the spirit and tone in which you are interacting with our commission, and I will say the public in general. Last year, I was a part of the committee that set the goals for 2023, and I would not say it was marked by collaboration and cooperation. And everything that I've heard from my colleagues and witnessed myself about you, I think it demonstrates very strongly that this is a new day and that you are collaborative and you genuinely care about this commission. I think you genuinely care about the district councils, and most importantly, you genuinely care about the local voices of the residents in our community. So I want to say thank you for that. And I love your statement that all officers are community officers. This is not just special units. With that, I have just two very brief questions. You'd stated that your traffic policy is focused on stolen vehicles and traffic safety. I just wanted to clarify, does that mean that you would agree that the traffic stop policy is not a legitimate policy for removing guns from the streets? And I guess I want to say very clearly, because I don't want to make you feel like you're in a trick bag here, no superintendent would ever say that you don't want to remove illegal guns from the streets. I'm not asking that. But is it your assessment of the traffic stop policy that you're using those traffic stops for stolen vehicles and traffic safety? And part of that is because you do not believe that it's been an effective strategy to remove guns from the streets.
So let me answer that by saying this. First off, it's not a policy, so there's nothing written that says that we have a policy for traffic stops to get guns. That's number one. Number two, when I say that the focus of traffic stops, when we have people in vehicles, so the focus itself is not the traffic stop itself. The focus is on crime. So when I'm looking at someone who I know may be committing a robbery, or I have reasonable suspicion or probable cause, that's going to be a traffic stop simply because they're in vehicles. What we will not do, and what I will not do, is measure the success of what we're doing based on traffic stops or the number of traffic stops. What I'm looking at is how effective our officers are in constitutional stops, whether it's in vehicles or whether it's on foot. Everything that we do should be rooted in constitutionality. No one should feel harassed on a traffic stop. So if we have a focus and our officers have that focus, because I can guarantee you this right now, officers don't want to go out and make an abundance of traffic stops. They want to recognize the people who are committing the most violent crimes, and they want to stop those people. And that's going to be the focus. So there will be no policy that says I'm going to judge an officer's effectiveness based on the number of traffic stops that he or she makes.
Okay. I'm not sure that answered this specific question, but I'm going to keep going on about if it's a successful strategy to remove guns from the streets. My last question is very, very brief. The title right now of the statute in Illinois about illegal gun possession, ownership without FOID card, proper paperwork, is called an unlawful use of a weapon, a UUW commonly called. I'm just curious if you would agree that that's a misleading title and you'd support changing the name of that legislation to something that reflects possession and not use.
Well, that's for the law to determine. That's for our legislators. However, I think any crime or anything that someone is charged with, it should be commensurate with the act. So if, for instance, I'm charged with the use of a weapon, and there should be something that says I was using it illegally. So would I be for something like that? Absolutely, as long as we know that whatever the crime is commensurate with whatever the person is being charged with.
Thank you, Superintendent. That concludes this portion. We appreciate you. We look forward to continuing this goal setting process with you.
Same here. And thank you to everyone.
Now I would like to ask Police Board President Ghian Foreman, and anyone from his team making a presentation to join us. But before that, I would like to invite Commissioner Troncoso to speak about the goal setting process to date.
Thank you, President Driver. Commissioners have been working collaboratively with President Foreman on developing his 2024 goals. In November, we suggested the following areas for consideration to President Foreman in drafting proposed goals. Number one, the police board hears and decides on appeals from denied officer applicants. We suggested that function as a potential goal area. Number two, the police board is also responsible for creating overarching rules for CPD. We suggested efficacy in the police board's rulemaking process as a potential goal area. Third, the police board is best known for hearing cases on officer misconduct and discipline. We suggested procedures for case review as a potential goal area. Fourth, similarly, we suggested standards for written opinions as a potential goal area. Fifth, we suggested community engagement and education as a potential goal area. And per municipal code, the agency head has the prerogative when deciding what to propose to the commission for the agency head's goals in 2024. After meeting with us to discuss our suggestions, President Foreman and his team submitted proposed goals on December 1st. I'm now pleased to invite President Foreman to present on his proposals.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you very much. The majority of the lion's share of the work of the police board is discharge cases. 9 civilian members review these cases. So that's the lion's share of our cases. The other part is where we have a disagreement case where the superintendent and the chief of COPA disagree. And then at that point, one member of the board has to make a decision. So our first goal was that in 2024, all board members will complete training on the law and procedures governing the board's consideration of police disciplinary cases. The training will be provided by the board's legal counsel. Training materials and attendance records will be provided to CCPSA. This is a goal that is consistent both with the Municipal Code of Chicago, case law, as well as the consent decree. Our second goal is that each written finding and decision shall include 1, an introduction that provides information on the incidents that led to the filing of the charges against the accused officer. 2, findings on each specification of the charges and an explanation of the reasons for those findings. 3, the disciplinary action, if any, to be imposed on the accused officers, and an explanation of the reasons for such action. And 4, a listing of how each member voted in each case. Each dissenting opinion shall include an explanation of the reason for that dissent. So we do some of this already, but the goal here was really to kind of clarify it, just to make it easier for everyone to understand. 3, each recommendation made by the police board to the Chicago Police Department, COPA, Public Safety IG, and or CCPSA shall be promptly posted on the board's website and announced at the first public meeting following the recommendation. Board president will be available to meet with CCPSA members or others to discuss the recommendation. So quite often we'll make a recommendation, something we observe in the course of our business, we'll make a recommendation, typically to CPD, and they typically get back to us with an answer, but that's not necessarily known to the public that that takes place. So just to kind of clarify some of that. The fourth goal has to do with appeals from disqualified applicants for a position of police officer. The board's president will discuss with representatives of CCPSA, CPD, and or CCPSA ways to increase and standardize the a police officer who have been removed from the to the results. Okay. All right. So when one applies to become a police officer and they are turned down, denied, the police board reviews those. All right. The police board reviews those cases. Challenge here, it's a written appeal. So it's very different from our standard case. And so to try to standardize this process a little bit, both with input from our appeals officers as well as the board, just trying to find ways to standardize the information that comes in for the board to review, which will make it easier for us to ultimately make a decision that is easier to understand. And goal 5, the board staff will work with CCPSA staff and other stakeholders to publicize the board's meetings and the work the board does to address all issues and concerns raised by the public. And so this was a goal since the return of the in-person meetings following the decrease of the COVID-19 cases. Police board attendance from the public has been lower than pre-pandemic levels. And this is a goal intended to revitalize public engagement and increase awareness of the board's meetings and the role they play in police accountability system. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now open it up to questions from commissioners, starting from my right with Commissioner Loizon. I also do not have any questions.
I have questions and a comment. And we don't know each other very well, but one of the things you'll get to know about me is the direct. I sit on 2 other goal setting teams. And when I read your goals, I had to reread them twice because of how underwhelmed I was. I don't understand why you didn't take the input of the commissioners working with you on creating your goals. And I also, as I read through the first few, if you're not already doing these things, then we should all be really concerned about what's happening with the police board. So I think my question is, it's that, why did you ignore your commissioners' input on where they thought your goals should go?
So I don't know that we ignored it. I think that it's still a learning process right now where the commission is still learning what the board does and how we operate. We're at the back end of a process. And so the majority of what we do is review cases that come in. And so that how we do that is based on the information that's presented. We're governed by municipal code. We're governed by the consent decree. So it's pretty standard what we do. We struggle to come up with 5 goals because most of our goals is around timeliness is already a part of what we have to do in consent decree. There's not much we can do to shorten that time. Right now, we have a couple of cases where it's longer than what it is because we have a vacancy. So we can't speed it up because we're stuck. We have a tie. So much of what we do, it just has to do with us. We're on the back end of it. It's not a lot. And so we went through, our meeting was scheduled for an hour and a half. And at an hour, we'd only gotten through the first one because we had to explain how our work is actually done. So if you want the truth, I was quite underwhelmed as well because I didn't really think that these were goals. I don't think that these were necessarily actionable, but you wanted 5 goals. So we tried to give you 5 goals.
Thank you so much, President Foreman, for being here. I think for me, I just would like to see in the current goals, right? For whomever will have to complete that. Again, more specificity and measurable outcomes that are relevant to the work that you all are tasked with actually doing. And another ask that I would say is more of a presence from the police board, and not necessarily you as the president, but even other members, because this is a community commission. And I know that so many people are not aware or familiar with individuals who sit on the police board. So giving access to you all, I think, is just a great opportunity for the board and the commission. And so I would just ask, though that may not be written into the legislation as a responsibility, but consider that as a goal just to meet community where they are so that we can just have these relationships with all the legal agencies within the city of Chicago. So that would be my ask.
Okay.
President Foreman, I don't have any questions for you, but thank you for coming out tonight. Good to see you.
Thank you.
One second. Thank you, President Foreman. Now I would like to ask Chief Administrator Kersten and anyone from her team making a presentation on behalf of, can you all hear me? To anyone from her team to join us, but before that, I would like to ask Commissioner Loizan to give a brief introduction.
Thanks. The commission has been working collaboratively with Chief Kersten on developing the 2024 goals. In November, we suggested 4 areas of goal setting. The first related around increased transparency. I think the way that we've most commonly described that to COPA is we are requesting more goals that permit community to understand exactly what has gone on in both investigations and disciplinary recommendations for COPA to show their work. We've asked for goals around increased consistency in disciplinary recommendations, which includes the ability for community members and police officers to understand the basis of those recommendations and how COPA came to the recommendation. We requested better communication in putting out information related to investigations and disciplinary recommendations so that people who are the complainants or the subject of the investigation understand where COPA is in the process of their case. And we requested goals around improved timeliness. I think as everyone probably remembers, in this past year, COPA took steps to try to reduce their backlog by reviewing hundreds of cases for administrative closure. And we requested goal setting to ensure that the timeliness that has been achieved will continue. On behalf of myself and Pastor Beth Brown, who works most closely with COPA, we want to first thank you and your team for being here today. We look forward to continue working with you on these goals. We had the opportunity to discuss the goals that have been articulated thus far with the chief late last week, and we're really looking forward to continuing to work together to make sure that these goals are going to create the improvements that we're hoping for.
Hey, thank you. Nice to be here this evening. Hello to all the commissioners, community members, and other leaders. I have many folks from my team here, including our first deputy, our chief of staff, our general counsel, some of our newest staff members, including a new community engagement liaison, and some other folks. So just wanting you to understand that COPA has always approached its work with the commission sort of with arms and eyes wide open. We really want to make this a collaborative process. That's not always easy, and the commissioners I work most closely with certainly understand that. But we really do try to approach this work wanting to listen and also to educate and inform. And I'm excited about the opportunity to do that again this year through the goal setting process. So COPA works a little differently. CPD is so much bigger than us, and the police board is quite smaller than us, right? We are an agency of just over 150 individuals. Our primary job, for those that don't know, is to investigate allegations or complaints of police misconduct and other notifications that we receive from the department, as well as to make policy recommendations based on patterns and practices of misconduct that we observe in the course of our investigative work. So that's really what our agency focuses most on. And the way that we do that most effectively is by collaborating across our agency. COPA is comprised of 5 different departments. The majority of our staff are assigned to investigations, just under 100 headcount. We have a communications department led by our first deputy that does our transparency work, which has a whole bunch of different facets, as well as deals with our news and media affairs and our public affairs, which is really community engagement. We also have a robust legal team that both advises our investigations and their outcomes, as well as services the general needs of us as an agency when we receive subpoenas and other things of that nature. And then we also have an administrative services branch headed by our chief of staff. They are responsible for navigating that arduous hiring policy we have as a city, getting staff on board, getting them the training and the skills that they need, keeping our IT systems, our computers, and the technology that we rely on up to date. And making sure that our staff is supported in the work that they do. And then lastly, we have a policy research and analysis division that has data scientists in it, PhDs, people with a lot of ability to look at what the data tells us, what stories and lessons are there to learn, so that we can make the most informed policy recommendations possible. And so really, when we think about how we want to address goal setting, we want all of those 5 different parts of our agency working together and working collaboratively. So we took the information and the feedback we received from Commissioners Brown and Loizen about some of the commission's thoughts for our goal setting. And then we also set out to have a series of listening sessions with our whole agency, not just me and my senior team all holed up in a room, but really making it available for the entire staff to think collectively about how we want to move forward as an agency. And through the course of those multiple conversations, as well as feedback from the commissioners, we sort of settled on what I'm contemplating calling right now 5 goal topics, right? Our work here in goal setting for 2024 is certainly not done, but we know sort of the 5 high-level areas that we need to focus on and intend to focus on as an agency. And as we move forward in finalizing these draft goals, it will come with a more comprehensive strategic plan, much like what I think the police department is looking to do, and that will have more specifics to both measure our progress and hold us accountable at the end of next year. But I'd like to spend just a little time talking about what those 5 overarching goals look like. And the first topic is consistency. consistency in all facets of what we do at COPA. I think for the commissioners and for the public and for officers and complainants who bring their experiences to our agency, consistency is really about two things: findings, meaning whether something was sustained or not sustained, exonerated, unfounded, what happened in an investigation, and arriving at those conclusions consistently, as well as disciplinary recommendations. Part of COPA's role is not just to investigate, but also to recommend initially to the department what we think the discipline should be in a case. Officers and complainants and families that are impacted by these incidents and really our broader community want those things to happen consistently. So we have some, just as a general principle, work to do. We know in continuing to create greater consistency, the consent decree also requires some of that work of us as an agency, and we'll have a specific series of things, really some operational adjustments internally that will go, number one, to disciplinary recommendations most urgently, as well as some other general operating principles. But consistency beyond that public-facing part also has to be about consistency of staff process. So we have work to do in the administrative end of our agency to make sure that how we onboard and offboard staff, that those protocols are consistent as well. Timeliness was the next big topic that we decided to tackle as an agency this year for 2024. As Commissioner Loizon mentioned, we have made incredible gains in our timeliness. I'm here before you saying for the first time in COPA's history, we have under 800 open cases, and that's just everything in the office. That's stuff that's brand new in intake all the way to reaching final conclusion. That number was nearly 2,000 less than a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So we've done tremendous amount of work to try to get that to a manageable number. We can't undo that work. And so our timeliness goals are really going to be around continuing to establish and make more robust benchmarks to hold our staff to, and to make sure that we continue to further the gains that have been made. The next big topic is about communication. And I think for us, transparency and communication are really kind of the same things. Transparency is one of the things that probably our transparency obligations with respect to video release and things of that nature, publication of our summary reports, those tend to be the reasons most members of the public know anything about COPA, is because we've released a video on our website that we're required to release under city policy, and the media has picked it up and run a story about it. Or we've published a final summary report after an investigation was concluded, as our ordinance requires us to do. And again, media or whomever picks up that report, and there's some traction on it. In addition to some of the things we have to do, we've spent a lot of time, and this was part of our 2023 goals and things that we intend to carry forward and expand further in 2024, with going beyond what are the obligations we have as an agency, and instead, how do we want to continue to engage further with the community that we serve? And so those efforts, again, will be led by our Communications and External Affairs unit. One of the best examples that I can highlight for that is something that we had as a 2023 goal. It was COPA's People's Academy. We launched our first ever sort of mini look for the public at how our staff is trained and how we address and approach these cases. I actually see multiple COPA People's Academy graduates here tonight, so nice to see you all. Those efforts have been really successful, and we need to encourage and expand more of that. And so things like that, I think, are going to be where we land in our strategic plan about how we want our communication to increase and expand, as well as using video and social media in different ways to send messages about our work to the public that we serve. Not everybody, newsflash, wants to read like a 20-page summary report. So we realize we have to communicate differently about the good work that we're doing every day. So those will be some of the things that you'll see specifically in our strategic plan on communications. The fourth topic that we selected was youth engagement. And this may seem strange. Why does a police misconduct investigatory agency want to be engaging youth? But the answer is that youth really drive a lot of our conversations around public safety, around police reform, and are at the front lines, whether it's on social media, in their schools, on campuses, about having really meaningful conversations on accountability issues. And youth are also the subject of a lot of police interactions. So making sure that our youth understand this process, understand policing and their authority and their rights, as well as what they can expect when or if they find themselves in a situation where a complaint needs to be made to COPA. That's a really big part of what we're going to focus on next year. And I should highlight that COPA is one of the only city agencies that actually received a dedicated budget line item to pay youth interns, emerging adults as young as high school students, have paid internship opportunities with us at COPA starting in 2024. So we have an obligation to make that experience meaningful. We have an obligation to make sure that our youth, our emerging adults, want to be a part of the public safety solution. And by doing that and making sure they're engaged, we hope to see increased positive interactions with our police, as well as our youngest community members. And then our last goal topic is really equity. This year, our staff, along with, I believe, 28 other city agencies, 25 other city agencies, developed a racial equity action plan under the leadership of the Office of Racial and Equity and Racial Justice, for the mayor's office. And that was a multifaceted approach led by staff members at all levels within our agency to really examine our work and how it impacts the communities that come to us with their experiences, as well as our own staff. And so our racial equity action plan itself is going to be a centerpiece in how we develop a strategic plan for 2024 around equity. But the bottom line is, whoever brings their story or experience to us, police officer, community member, family member, witness, they need to have similar experiences, and we need to be willing to have hard truths about ourselves as an agency in ensuring that equity and that level of engagement across the board is being had. Additionally, our staff represent a diverse cross-section of Chicago, and they need to have equity in experience in their time at our agency, whether their plan is to grow professionally or to serve in the role that they have. We need to make sure that that looks the same for everybody. So making sure that we have accessible career development opportunities for staff that are equitable is going to also be something that we highlight as we develop the strategic plan. And lastly, I'll just say, I really do appreciate the opportunity to have the back and forth that we have with commissioners. It's going to be meaningful as we hammer out exactly what 2024's strategic plan looks like. And I appreciate the back and forth that we have with community. The space that is created by public meetings like this, where community can express concerns of all manner. Tonight, we talked a lot about traffic stops and whether they're pretextual or constitutional. To have the superintendent of one of the largest police forces in our country here tonight to hear that from people that he leads in this capacity is tremendously valuable. And to have a commission that wants to make space for, multiple things to be true at once, right? Police traffic stops have valid, legitimate public safety services and purposes. Yes, I think we can all agree to that. And police stops can be pretextual and can cause harm. I think we all can agree to that too. And what I appreciate about the commission is that we are making room for both of those things to be true in many different aspects of how we're trying to tackle police reform. We certainly don't all agree all the time, but there is a level of respect that I really appreciate. And I know that I have learned from my relationship, particularly with the two commissioners I work most closely with. And I learn when I come here at any public meeting and have the opportunity to listen to the community members that I serve in this role. So thank you for this opportunity.
We'll now move to questions from commissioners. Let's start on the left this time. So Commissioner Nellis.
Oh, shoot. I've always enjoyed the time to to think. So I will.
Perfect. This is how I want it.
Well, you know what? I will not ask questions because I was actually was able to give a lot of my feedback to the commissioners on this earlier today. So I will pass it to others.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Kersten, for being here this evening. I think for me, with everything, just a bit more specificity and metrics. I think you opened up with that so that we can really track, more so what are the outcomes we're looking to achieve with some of these goals. And I think the one ask I would have in terms of when we're thinking about the specificity is how we articulate, when you mentioned the goal around consistency, right? Does that look like a standard operating procedure that needs to be established so that we can measure that everyone is following those same steps? So if we can, incorporate those types of things, I think it will be helpful to measure how we're ensuring consistency is actually happening when it comes to the work.
Absolutely. I think we're aligned in that we understand we need to have measurable, sort of demonstrable outcomes that we can look at as the year progresses. I think with some of the areas like disciplinary recommendations in particular, that work, that's a consent decree item. And so that work is underway between us and the independent monitoring team. And I'm excited to share sort of the progression of how our disciplinary recommendations will become more standardized so that we can ensure greater consistency. So yes, some of these will absolutely develop into specific, we call them operational guidance internally at COPA, but for sure.
Thanks so much for being here, Chief Administrator Kersten. So, I think on the subject of metrics, I think one of the chief things people care about with COPA is, of course, timeliness, and I appreciate that that's one of your core goals. I would be curious to hear from you, as staffing is a key input to timeliness and raising staffing levels is a key input to closing cases. I know that's projected to increase for 2023 as we hit the year end. Do you have a goal for increasing staffing further for 24?
So we're actually at just over 90%. I think the last person we're going to onboard for this year starts tomorrow, and she's actually a former intern at COPA. So that's a fantastic situation for us to be in as an agency. And that's an increase up. We're just under 74% at the start of this year. So that's a really exponential growth for an agency of our size. So yeah, I think we will have to have, like, you can consider that a consistency goal as far as I'm concerned, of consistently trying to prioritize maintaining our staffing levels. But I think some of that is obviously outside of our control. Folks that are on staff at the commission know some of the inherent challenges, as does CPD and the police board, about onboarding individuals. But we continue to really try to push the envelope on how we recruit and retain talented people to do this important work. And I think, yes, that will be one of our administration department's goals for 2024, more specifically.
So I do have a question which has kind of been answered around timeliness, and I will admit that I haven't been the best about interacting with COPA and interacting with the two commissioners that interface with you the most. At least for the last 2-3 months, we had the budget report, and we trying to make sure the police board exists past Wednesday, and also like a bunch of other things. But I can't go anywhere that are police officers without someone pulling me to the side and asking the question of what can we do about how long this takes. And it does get to a point of like heartbreak when you hear some folks where he's like, I'm cool if you fire me. I'm cool if I keep my job, but the worst thing you can do to me is leave me in purgatory for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear it so often from people who have no interactions with one another. And so, it is something that's in the back of my mind that, like, as soon as I get through these like next 5 things, right, I want to start to try to figure that out. But like, what is it exactly? Where's the system breakdown between the department, between COPA? And again, I know I could have probably asked our staff and stuff, but you're here, so I'm just trying to get a better understanding of what happens to where an officer is accused of something. Like in a court of law, you have a right to a speedy trial. And I do empathize with them, right? I don't know the ins and outs of their cases, but I can imagine how hard it is to provide for a family if you are, you don't know whether you're going to have a job or what's going to happen, what's your outcome going to be for that long.
Absolutely. I think, and first of all, I would add complainants and impacted families feel just as much, frustration at times with how the length of our investigations. Whether or not they have a financial interest might be different. But certainly everyone involved in these investigations deserves resolution one way or the other. Agree with us or not, you deserve to know what's happened in your investigation. And I'll say a couple of things on that. Something that we determined or figured out, I should say, about the way our case management system functions, particularly with officer notifications, is really a missed opportunity and a correction that we're making for 2024. So officers don't necessarily, they get notifications under our ordinance if something is over 6 months old, right? So they, a lot of times, and I hear this from officers all the time, because believe it or not, I talk to officers a lot too. And something I hear a lot from officers is the frustration around that loop of, I got another 6-month notification, I got another 6-month notification. Well, the vast majority of the complaints that we receive don't actually result in sustained misconduct findings, right? Many of those cases are concluded without officers ever even having to come in. And largely that's because we have a lot of body worn camera evidence now. We have access to information and particularly video information and evidence that we never had before as an agency prior to BWCs. But the glitch here in the system is that officers don't get a notification from COPA saying, hey, your case got closed and we didn't have sufficient evidence of any misconduct, so you didn't have to come in for an interview. So that just gets left in the wind, and there's sort of an unresolved nature of that. So there's far more cases that are concluded that officers probably don't know are concluded, and that's one adjustment that we are making. That is not the same for complainants because of the way our case liaisons are able to reach out to those individuals, because of officers having FOP and union rights and protections. We don't reach out directly to them to give them status updates on their cases, but we can make sure that our case management system is giving them automatic notification of those cases. That's an easy fix. Something else that's really important to me, and these notifications should be going out by the end of the year. We've closed over 600 cases this year based on this review of our aging caseload, right? Every single officer that was in that group of cases should know that those cases were concluded without disciplinary recommendations. So those are notifications that we look to be making by the end of this year. And then moving forward, our goal is to conclude all of these investigations in no more than 18 months. That may seem really long to people, but the reality is there are certain investigations, whether it's a criminal investigation or an administrative investigation, that take longer than we would like them to. There's also a volume issue that we'll never be able to conclude all of these investigations in 30 days or 60 days. But if we can conclude the majority of them in 6 months or less, and all of them in under 18 months, that gets us so much further along in progress and providing resolution to everyone that's impacted by these. And that's where our goals around timeliness are going to be filled in with some more specific benchmarks, many of which we're tied to under the consent decree already, and things that we'll be able to improve on now that we have a much more manageable caseload. But thank you for the question.
Thank you for your explanation. I just have one comment, and I think we addressed it in our meeting, but I just want to make sure to shore it up. When I look at COPA's vision and mission, and one thing I would say is I would just encourage in the process of more specificity, which I know you're committed to really ensure that the specificity is grounded in the mission and vision, which is something you guys have done a very good job at. But just to reemphasize that, I do want to emphasize in your mission statement, make policy recommendations to improve the Chicago Police Department, thereby reducing incidents of police misconduct. I just want to emphasize that I think it's so important that we don't lose sight of the fact that COPA's mission is not only to make disciplinary recommendations for potential punishment, but to also make recommendations to improve our police officers. And I think, as we sit here tonight, we listen to the goal setting from you, from the police board, from the superintendent. It's just important to emphasize that we're all on the same team of trying to improve the Chicago Police Department. All of the entities have their own role in doing that. And I think I don't want to miss an opportunity to emphasize COPA's role in providing feedback to CPD to ensure that they can address issues that are arising that don't necessarily require a police officer getting a significant suspension or a firing, but do require some tweaks in training and, other areas where policing can be improved.
I wholeheartedly agree and support that. And just want to note that CPD is well aware that we have been fulfilling that obligation under our mission and under our ordinance, and have over time been making those kinds of recommendations. But at least CPD leadership, let me say it that way. But something, again, a missed opportunity and something that we're starting to correct is myself, First Deputy Ephraim Eady, other folks from COPA, we go and we engage every single CPD recruit class. And we typically tell them about what they can expect under our investigations, what the process looks like. This week, for the first time ever, we brought people from our Policy Research and Analysis Division to talk to recruits for just this reason, Commissioner Loizon, because CPD needs to understand that we have a lot of resources that are devoted to trying to make their jobs better. The folks that showed up from that division were able to say to new CPD recruits, here are the recommendations we made in policies so that your job is easier. And those are things that we've identified as gaps or deficiencies or opportunities for improvement based on complaints that we received that may not have ever resulted in discipline, but may have identified the need for continued policy development. And getting that information into the hands of rank and file CPD, I think, is really important, because the majority of the complaints that come in our door don't result in sustained discipline findings or recommendations. And there is an inordinate amount of additional work devoted by our agency to improving CPD, not tearing down CPD or solely focused on accountability measures only. But they need to understand that, and we have to engage the department and its membership differently for that message to be heard. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're done with questions, right? Okay.
Thank you.
Just for an opportunity to kind of sum a few things up, I just wanted to make it clear to everyone here who's listened to all of these presentations that in the course of preparing for our collaboration with the police board, COPA, and the superintendent for goal setting, we did spend a lot of time talking to various subject matter experts across all three disciplines. We also spent a lot of time looking at prior disciplinary opinions, summary reports from COPA. I know the commissioners that were most responsible for CPD goal setting spent a lot of time having conversations in various areas of CPD, speaking to officers, speaking to community members. There's a lot of work that goes into it. We also focused on some of the findings that have been issued in reports from the Office of the Inspector General. And I just want to call attention to one of those reports. It was issued in 2022, and it was directed at BIA, COPA, and the police board. And in the course of the executive summary, there was a recommendation to ensure procedural consistency and fairness in the determination of the discipline across misconduct investigations. And there was a comment that the disciplinary process is unpredictable for involved members and risks arbitrary outcomes. And it was also noted that it was unpredictable for community as well. I highlight this because through the course of our work on this process, one thing that has become apparent, at least to me and my colleagues who focus on the disciplinary side of things, is that there is no disciplinary matrix or guidelines for what recommended discipline should be for the Chicago Police Department. CPD did include in their goal setting this year, focusing on working collaboratively with other agencies to create that kind of matrix. There's also a collective bargaining component to that we have no control over, that's related to union representation. But I wanted to take this opportunity first and foremost to urge the groups that we do have some oversight over to please consider working very closely together to provide that kind of guidance so that community members know what to expect when it comes to officer discipline, and so that police officers also know what to expect. So there isn't that feeling of arbitrariness or confusion. And I also want to add that I did hear the frustration from President Foreman in the goal setting process. It's funny how two people can have the same conversation and walk away with different viewpoints. I thought that was like a really great collaboration where we were getting to understand each other better. But I highlight that frustration to say that I think what we see in this work is that depending on your perspective in a situation, things may seem very clear to one party, and they may seem very unclear to the other party. I'm a lawyer. I've been working in the criminal justice system for most of my adult life, and I feel like I have a very strong handle on the processes. And I will tell you that the CPD disciplinary process that includes COPA and the police board and the way all of those systems operate together completely confounds me most of the time. And I am in the weeds of it every single day. So I say all that to be clear to all of you and to members of the community and the Chicago Police Department who are listening, that is really our goal, to make sure that that process is not arbitrary, to make sure that it is fair, and to make sure that everyone in the community actually understands it. And so in working on this goal setting, while it may seem tedious and frustrating for some of those reasons, because it may be old hat to some people, I think the majority of Chicagoans have a really hard time understanding how it works. And it's our goal to ensure that we shine some light on that process. Before I conclude my comments, I do want to say that President Foreman is going to be off the police board after a very long tenure, and this is his one of his last acts as the president. So we wish you well in your future endeavors.
Thank you. We'll now move on to miscellaneous business. I believe that Isaac Troncoso and Commissioner Brown have an announcement.
Thank you, President Driver. I'd like to give an update about a project I've been independently working on for the past 5 weeks or so with the support of some commission staff. As we've served on this commission, it has become clear the shortfalls that exist in the realm of victim services. Too often, victims are left to blindly navigate our policing system themselves without guidance, feeling like they are screaming into the void at times. This is personal to me, as myself and other commissioners have had firsthand experiences with crime in just our 1 year of service. Lack of victim follow-up appears to me to be a contributing cause of 2 enormous issues that we have identified as a commission. Number 1, lack of trust between community and police, and number 2, an inability for police to solve crime. When victims' issues are left unsolved, it breaks trust, one person at a time. When victims cannot get a hold of detectives working on their case, it can make it difficult to know where to send additional evidence. Many other cities across the country have what is called a victim satisfaction survey, a continuously running survey of victims that report crime. Imagine a world where you could report a crime online and then and there submit feedback as to how your case was handled. These surveys are designed to get feedback from the people that our police department serves every day. Coming from the private sector myself, it is a basic rule of thumb that in order to improve any product, you must listen to the opinions of the people that interact with it, and you should treat that feedback like gold. Over the past 5 weeks, I've spoken with 5 police departments across the country that have implemented these kinds of surveys with victims advocacy groups local to Chicago, members of CPD's victim services and community policing departments, academic experts on criminology from Northwestern, UIC, and DePaul, and other stakeholders as well. Because the survey I'm proposing would be getting new data every day as people report crime, you would be gaining real-time insights, being able to see district by district which problems are popping up and addressing them. If implemented, Chicago would be the first major city in the United States to gather and use feedback data from victims at this scale. We have the opportunity to be a national leader in victim services rather than being behind cities like Malden, South Carolina, Casper, Wyoming, and Peachtree, Georgia, to name a few. Cities as small as 10,000 people that are ahead of this on this issue right now. I deeply appreciate that Superintendent Snelling also believes there's more work to be done in the realm of victim services in light of the drastic increase in victims advocates budgeted in the 2024 budget. Perhaps such a survey could help to guide these advocates' work or help to prioritize where detectives follow up. In closing, I have not yet brought up this idea directly to Superintendent Snelling until now, but I would urge him to consider this kind of real-time victim services satisfaction survey integrated into the crime reporting process as a way to address his 2024 goals to improve investigations and have victims served in a more timely fashion. This would truly help make our department more data-driven, rebuild trust, and solve crime, and I hope we can collaborate on this soon.
Thank you, Commissioner Troncoso. So I have an announcement, and that is if you would like to be on the next commission, applications are going to be open on January 8th. The District Council Nominating Committee has been working very, very hard for months getting this process up and going. So applications will open January 8th and close February 7th. We encourage you to apply, and if it's not your thing, think about the people around you that you think are a good bridge between the community and could be a good bridge to the other agencies, and encourage them, nudge them to apply. We want to make sure there are tons of applications and that the process really gets to the right people for this next commission. So thank you all.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.